So we're back again, episode 2. Now I get to sit down with the high school, middle school, well, all high school teachers today. And we got a treat because we got students. So Ed Talk for the Soul. We are here today with 2 amazing teachers, high school teachers, and 2 students that's going to just share some tips on how we get back to school on the right foot and how do we make this transition in the midst of a global interracial pandemic. So I'm gonna give y'all an opportunity to introduce yourselves, and then from there we're gonna pick it up and go.
All right, I'll introduce myself. I'm Stephanie Bailey. I am a secondary science teacher and am going into my 22nd year of teaching.
I'm Kayla Hostetler. I am an English teacher. I've been teaching for 12 years and I teach 9th through 12th grade English.
My name is Jamon. I'm former student of Kayla Hostetler. Former student.
I'm Erica. I am a current student of Kayla Hostetler and I am a senior at Aiken High School.
So as we think about the fact that we've been in a very awkward position for the past school year and a half, where are y'all minds at right now? How are y'all feeling from the standpoint of a teacher, standpoint of both of y'all are parents, from the standpoint of a student? How are you feeling right now?
I think overwhelmed and confused is the best way to start. I am in a situation where the school can make decisions outside of the governor's mandate. And so we just got word today that we are all going to be wearing masks and required. So I'm feeling a little more comforted in that stance. But I know not everybody has that luxury. And that's going to be a really tough challenge. And I'm not sure how kids are feeling about going into schools and how teachers are feeling going into that environment. So I'll pass it to Kayla for that.
I think overwhelmed is a good word. We are in a place where we have to follow the governor's mandate, and we're our second day into school, and we had a live tornado threat today. It wasn't a drill. And so second day of school, and our school has increased its numbers. So we have a lot more kids. Our freshman class is over 500. We cannot mandate masks. We have 30 kids on average a class. And so it's scary as a teacher that I can't mandate this, and in trying to want the kids to be safe, but also I'm afraid to bring something home to my young children who are 5 and 1 who can't be vaccinated. So as a teacher, I'm overwhelmed a little bit and scared for just general health of everybody because I'm seeing so close of numbers and so tight, and the school really doesn't have any control of being able to do any type of restrictions. They're doing what they can, they're trying, but it's a lot of kids in a tight space.
Erica, what about you as a student? How are you feeling?
It's more of a scary feeling because you never know what's going to happen. And you could just be sitting in class one day and then all of a sudden you're quarantined and you don't know why. You don't know who from, you don't know what class. So the not knowing what's going to happen in the future, but also seeing how scared the teachers are isn't helpful either. And like Ms. Hostetler said, they can't mandate masks. So a lot of the school isn't wearing masks. And as someone who is very prone to sickness, COVID is a very scary thing. So I think just the unknowingness of everything is really scary.
And as we think about these things moving into the beginning of the school year, what are y'all suggestions for teachers, especially to be able to, in a humane way, understand their fears, understand the realities that they're dealing with, but being able to move forward and give the best for their students?
I recently heard somebody say something and it's resonated with me. It said, we have to remember the enemy is COVID. No matter what, we may not disagree with how other people are handling and their views, whether they're vaccinating or not, masking or not. We're all against COVID. And I think if I try to put myself in that position, it helps a little bit. And then thinking about that, for all my kids are going to come in that door, if I was in a situation like Ms. Hostetler is and Erica is, that they're not having masks, that those parents are trying to do the best by their kids, that they love their kids, they are caring for their kids, and they're making the best decision they can. That helps a little. It keeps my fears in check, that I'm worried about this virus. I'm not mad at the kids. I'm not mad at their parents. I'm worried about the virus, and I'm going to do what I can do and control what I can control.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on. I think having that mindset that I can do what I can do and control what I can control, because there's a lot we can't control right now. And so really focusing in on those kids. I know as much as I was scared and overwhelmed at times, it was good to be back with those kids. It was good to have those interactions. We started off with story circles, this, as I always do, about, what was your experiences in school, and just starting to hear the different perspectives and just being interacted already. It's only day 2 and we had a lot of stuff go on already, but you just, those stories, that interaction kind of helps alleviate the fears too in some ways.
So let's talk about building community, because you mentioned the stories circles. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what it takes to build community? For my background, I'm elementary based, so it looks a lot different from the elementary school than the high school. So can you tell us how you build community in your classroom and how that looks?
All right, so it's only day 2, and I have a few kids I know from last year, but not many. So it's really, we're building right now. We're seeing what's happening. But from day 1, I start with story circles, and essentially, they have to sit and listen to each other's story. You can't interrupt. And then after everyone tells their stories, you kind of focus on the commonalities or differences. And so we do always, what was your worst experience in school? Because I don't know, high school kids like telling you all the bad stuff that ever, occurred. And it actually, in Erica's class, it was really it was a lot. It was pretty traumatic things this year. And it really caught me off guard in some ways in the list they had and some of the things that were on there. And then we tell about, okay, now what was the good things? Because we like to end the story on some good stories. What were the best experience you had? And then we kind of come up with our class norms, right? We want to strive for that positive. So what happened? And Jaman has led those same story circles. He's actually led those activities for other classes for me. But it's been a good start. And then today we did Where I'm From poems. So really spending a lot of time getting to know their backgrounds, getting to know who they are, and having them demonstrate that in different modalities is what I'll be doing the next 2 weeks.
And so we talk a lot about not teaching at the beginning of the school year and really getting to know our students. But for some of those who are dead set on, I got to teach, I think you're showing them a great way of being able to incorporate those standards, incorporate those lessons and those skills that they need to know and need to learn, and be able to still get to know your students. So Jaman and Erica, from the student perspective, is it easy being vulnerable at the beginning of the school year with your teacher though?
I feel that it's very easy to be vulnerable, because when the first few days of school is it's really it's fresh. You don't know what to expect. Even on the first day, you get a sense of how the classroom and everything is going to be, but in my mind, you still don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Just starting the new school year off, you got to always make sure that you get a good understanding of your environment first. That's what I do. I like to get to really feel how the teacher is and stuff. Try to see who's all in the classroom and stuff, and just to get comfortable with everybody in the environment before I know for a fact that I'm ready to start out the year. So that's the only thing that goes through my mind is the environment, and if I'm safe in that environment.
So you're saying that it's easy to be vulnerable is there any point where you lose that like safety or anything from that being able to share that vulnerability?
I wouldn't say particularly like nothing's crazy come up to the point where I'm like, yeah, I don't think I should, like, I don't want to be in this classroom. But like it's certain things that maybe you said, it was like, oh, it's gonna take me a while to kind of adjust to this classroom settings. But that's all about the beginning weeks, like this, just to see, so you like find out what you need to pay more attention in, and versus, oh, I'm already comfortable in this state, I'm good for the whole year. So that first week and the first few days of starting the school, that's you really got to make sure that what you need to work on, what you need to look out for, versus what you need to work on, what you already know what's yet to come. So,
Gotcha. And Erica, Miss H, because I always say your name wrong, Kayla, and I'm not even gonna try.
You know, the kids say Miss H or Mama H, Miss H. That's what they say too. So don't worry about it.
And we're gonna come back to that part too. But Erica, y'all shared earlier about how in your class it got to be pretty emotional. And so can you talk about what that vulnerability means to you, how you're able to reach that? And is that something that you can get to in every classroom?
Okay. I wish I could have a similar response to Jamon, but I have had teachers in the past that have been very awful. Miss H was kind of like a blessing in disguise. I walked into her class not knowing what to expect, and she broke me out of my shell a little bit. This is my third year having her. So it definitely takes me a minute to get to that vulnerability, because that's not something that I'm very good at. There are teachers who try and aren't as successful. So I just think it's about the teacher's approach. So with Miss H, she's like, share if you want to, but just know that eventually you will share. And so she gives you that chance to get comfortable and people watch and feel the classroom out a little bit. And I think it's also the atmosphere that you create in your classroom. If you create a safe atmosphere, whether that's how we include SEL, which is social and emotional learning. And so she will make sure she'll ask you how your day has been, or she'll just make conversation with you. And so she creates that kind of relationship rather than I'm a teacher and I'm going to talk at you. And a lot of the teachers at the school, it's very 50-50. But I think it's also a lot easier now because everybody's going through this state of uncertainty. And so a lot of teachers are trying to create that environment, that safe environment for their kids to come back to. So it's just easier for everyone. So I think right now is the easiest time for teachers to create those types of relationship with their students.
And hearing, I'm glad you brought that perspective, to show that there is no one way that students are going to experience schools and going to experience teachers. And there's so many different factors that go into it, from backgrounds, gender, race, everything that you can kind of think about. It really brings into those different perspectives. So when we think about those things, Ms. Bailey, can you share how you establish your classroom community to make sure that you're reaching all those students, from the students like Jamon, who's willing to come in and be vulnerable, to the students like Erica, and I would probably put myself in that same category, who might be a little reluctant to be vulnerable out to someone that they don't know.
I know, and I think I would put myself right in the middle of them. I appreciate what Erica said, because she's the kind of kid that I'm worried about making sure I get a hold of. So I have 3 things that I try to do at the start of the year, and I think I would put myself in one of those people being, I gotta teach right away, but because I want them to be excited about my content, so I wanna wow them with something early, being in science. But I gotta learn their names and I gotta say it right, and I gotta do that early, and I wanna say their names every day. I wanna say everybody's name every day. Um, it's not always super easy, but that's my goal. But, it means something even as an adult to have somebody know my name and say it. One thing I started doing several years ago that I think allows me to hit the kids who are not as open being publicly vulnerable. I write a letter to each of my students. It's one letter that they all get to read, telling them a little bit about myself, a little bit where I come from, what I love about teaching science, and just some of, about myself. I think this letter I put in there about my thoughts on e-learning and how it was miserable, not fun, glad to be back in person, even though it's uncertain. And then everybody writes a letter back to me, and they get to tell me what they want about themselves. They tell me about how they feel about science. Um, so I guess it's a more of a written story circle, but not everybody else is reading it. But I think the key to that is that I then reply back. So I make sure they know I read their letters. And if they tell me they cheered, I share with them that I tried it once in 7th grade and found out I have 2 left feet. So it didn't work, or, we talk about those things. And it kind of opens a door for a running conversation. With the advent of all the digital, we could keep a running Google Doc going back and forth, but I make sure I keep those letters because, so many kids, I'll forget who did what or said what, but I could go back to that. And then I try to bring in, I had a class of marine science one year where I had 5 kids who had family in Puerto Rico. So we made sure that when we talked about ecosystems, we hit Puerto Rico just to make sure that they had some buy-in. And the last little piece I like to do, which I don't know that the kids know I do this, is I email their parents and ask them to tell me what I need to know. Because, you might have, Kayla and I are both parents, I've got a kid who's a ham and a half at home and he's dancing, but at school he doesn't do that. But if you get him to know him, he'll do it. And then I've got another one who can bake up a storm, but he's Mr. Serious at school. Little things like that. Tell me what I need to know. Oh, they'll come out of their shell when, if you hit this, or ask them about this little thing, or they did an internship somewhere. And that's so much fun to get to know what the parents want me to know. Sometimes they'll tell you some important things like, they have, anxiety, or, they get shy, but sometimes I'll tell you some fun stuff, which that starts the door. And then throughout the year, we all teachers, or most teachers, I'm going to look at Erica and Jamon, and for it's not all, right? Start the class with a little assignment to do. Sometimes I try to throw in a fun one, tell me when Thanksgiving's coming up, what are your family traditions, to learn a little bit more that way. And we talk about it. And, that goes just to me, but I'll poke my head up, looking at the computer and going, oh, we do that too, or tell me more about that. And that's kind of fun. It just gives us like a little check-in, especially with the holidays coming up, the different holidays that come around through the year. I don't know. Those are a few of the things I do.
I really appreciate one of the points that you bring up is your willingness to be vulnerable with your students. And I think that's really important, to be able to open up students' minds and hearts to be comfortable with you, to know that you're human too, to know that you've made mistakes, to know that you didn't make the cheerleading team, to know that you tried at something and may not have been successful at it, or at one point you were too in their shoes. Because a lot of times we have this barrier between teachers and students, and it's almost like teachers aren't real humans. So it's like they see you in the store and it's like, wait, you at the store? Why are you doing at the grocery store? Like, you're not supposed to cook dinner like they're cooking dinner. And so being able to make sure that we reach that point of vulnerability is so important. And I think one of the ways that we do that is continue to just be completely open with our students, completely open with our families, and completely open with everyone. And so, not to put you on the spot, Kayla, but as we think about building that community and such, you do a lot with building community and maintaining that community throughout the year, not only just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. So I'm gonna let Jamon talk more about how that has impacted you. And Jamon, after you finish, we have Kayla, she'll share some about what she actually does, or either way, whichever way y'all want to do it.
So helping the community around the school, my school that I used to go to, is a big part of my life now, because when I first started high school, I felt I was a leader. Like, I'm always considered myself a leader, but I don't like that's when I actually started to put in the actions after I graduated. So you can kind of tell how much I've matured and how much like I started to focus on trying to play a bigger role for former classmates of mine and younger classmate students that's coming in the school now. That me talking and being a mentor to students that are still in school and stuff, I feel like it helps them a little bit. It gives them a little, like, takes a lot of bad thoughts and energy from out of their mind, because it's like when they hear me talk and say, well, I had the same teacher, or I was in the same situation, and they hear how I like was able to deal with the situation and learn my methods to be prepared for anything really. That takes a lot of stress off of them and everything. And so me being a leader, I feel like I make more people comfortable going to other teachers that they to talk to the teachers that they're not comfortable with. Like, let's get another shot instead of just giving up. Because I feel like if I wasn't there, or they didn't ask me a question or like that, they still have the same issue, and I don't think it would ever be resolved. I don't think they would ever want to get up and talk to that teacher. But I don't know. I feel like I motivate people to want to like talk out of handling the situation, especially when it comes down to school, because I know how stressful school can get, especially during like the high school. After the first year is over, it starts to get more intense each year, and so I know how much that can be on somebody, especially coming back to school now. So.
All right. Sorry, my kids busted in on me in mid. I think I saw you muted me, so I don't know what was heard, because I was probably like, get out of here.
No. And that's a part of reality. Like, we're able to like balance all these different hats. I mean, that's one thing COVID definitely has shared.
Yeah.
But Jamon really opened the door to this conversation about the work that we owe our students to be able to include them in community and how that looks. So if you can just share about how you developed that and really how you got into that is important.
Yeah, so I started off teaching out in Ridge Spring, and it's a very small school, and that has been a blessing. I owe so much to those teachers out there, those mamas, grandmas, church members. Teaching at such a small school, real young, taught me really quickly how important community and families and pulling them in was. And I moved from Pittsburgh down to South Carolina, and we want to talk about cultural shocks and differences and not understanding things. And I was just like, I realized within the first day, I'm like, I have a lot to learn. Like, my experiences have not been anywhere close to what some of these kids are experiencing. And so I started just by going to community events. Church was really important to the kids at that school. And I was like, okay, I'm going to everybody's church. I'm just going to show up, go to church. And I had some of the best experiences in my life. I thought I was at church in the North, but I didn't know like how deep Southern church is. And I was like, I'll be back in 45 minutes. I didn't know that's not what was going to happen at the Baptist church. I didn't understand. And so I learned quickly that involving community is important, because that's where the kids are. They live, they work, they're part of it. And so I intentionally use curriculum within my classes to say, okay, how are we going to reach out to the community this year? What ways are we going to engage the kids in the community? And then I had this lovely experience at a meeting up in Columbia at the center. And Dr. Reeves was sitting there and she looked at me and said, "You got kids that would do activism work?" I was like, "Oh, how many kids you need? I got a whole list of kids. Who do you want?" And she connected me to the Next Generation Youth Activist Network out of Middlebury College. And it's really intentional about centering youth voice, working in communities for the kids to make actionable change. And that has been a big blessing. Now kids like Jamon and Erica, they say, "I want to see this change in my community." And they work on action steps and make differences. So Erica mentioned social emotional learning early. That's what the kids said this year. We need our teachers to know what social emotional learning is. We need our peers to learn how to regulate emotions, because we see everyone's going through some more depression, some more suicide attempts. And that's their action plan. And Erica and Arlo just presented for the first time ever at the district conference, the first student presenters on training on social emotional learning. So it's been a blessing. I have been blessed to, as Stephanie said about writing to the parents and having them put input. It's something I do at the beginning and email them every week to get to know about their kids, but asking them to come in. And you find people like my one kid, Grant, his dad's a spoken word poet. If I want to put feelers out, I would have never known that, and bringing them in. And we do projects that tie back out. We did a lending library for the Boys and Girls Club. My husband's a geometry teacher, so his kids designed it. And my kids did research on what's the appropriate literature for the kids in that area, what's going to be the books that reflect them. But the biggest blessing has been watching kids like Jamon and Erica do all this on their own. They don't need me. I just kind of sit there and smile and take notes sometimes, and they come up with the coolest ideas. And that learning to be quiet and value their voice, but help them take action has been one of the biggest blessings. And I'm so glad that I was just at a center meeting that day and the right people were in the room. So networking has been also something with other teachers that I've seen that has been super beneficial. And the center is a beautiful example of how networking is beneficial.
And so you hit on a lot of those points of how you're engaging your students interdisciplinary, where you're partnering with the geometry class, and especially in a subject like English that might not be the most appealing subject. So Stephanie, I want to ask you if you can share some of the ways that you have made science more appealing and more desirable to students who may not love science.
Oh, well, I mean, we just get their hands on it, first of all, that's best practices. But I paid attention to my kids. I'm going to give you an example that my students put me through we went through together this past year. We were talking, I listened to them. And so I'm trying to feed off of what they're telling me to include in their lessons. We do all the examples of, if you're an athlete, make sure you're eating this kind of food. Those are the basics. But I had a group of kids start talking about traits with her inherited traits. And if we know it's fatal, why do we let people have kids and risk passing it on? A completely innocent question. The trait was Huntington's disease. It doesn't show up till you're an adult. So you've already had your kids, passed it on before you know you have this fatal trait. So why do we let them have kids? And I kind of looked at him. I said, "What do you mean let them have kids?" So, well, I said, "Sounds kind of like Hitler." I said, no, not kill them, just not let them have kids. I said, okay. So now you're talking about eugenics. And here I had to pull my vulnerability. I said, okay, give me a few days. Let me do my homework. And we came back and because of their talking, we explored the history and the United States culpability in eugenics. And they kind of stopped and looked at me and said, "Wait, we gave the ideas to Germany?" Yeah, we started that. And so that was kind of exciting and interesting. And I think letting them know that they can bring up anything and I'm going to entertain it. We may not have time to dive into it, but we could talk about it. Yeah, we're going to get through our standards, whatever, but we're going to talk about it. But if you bring it up, we're going to make it fit. And to ask and to be able to, I was impressed that kid felt comfortable enough to ask that question in class and not have his classmates shoot him down. Even though, we had some big eyes, but then go, "Oh yeah, why or where?" And, and it was a good opening. And I appreciated that opportunity to have that conversation with them. And so now I've got that in my pocket. So if it comes, we can tie that in again for the next group of kids and make sure that we're we're talking about that. So I think making sure that I'm paying attention to them, they're going to keep me on my toes. It's not going to get stale. It's not the same thing year to year. But try to stay up with the news and figure out what's bothering them and what they're worried about. COVID right now.
And the reality is we don't know everything.
No.
And we will, and students will teach us all the time. And being willing to say, hey, listen, that's a good question. I don't know. Either say, you go research it, come back and tell us more about it, or give me a few days. Let me figure out, let me kind of catch my bearings, and then we'll come back and we have this conversation. And I, even at the elementary school level, I get so much acceptance from that. Like, hey, like my teacher don't know everything either. And so like, because I know when I was coming up, we had this whole idea that adults knew everything, and adults carried this persona like they were all knowing. And that's the one thing that we have to be willing to say is like, hey, I don't know it, or hey, I messed up. And just as if we messed up, our students can mess up too. Like our students can have bad days. Our students can just need to not talk to somebody for a day, and just being able to honor that humanity in them and in ourselves.
On more than one occasion, I've had to bring a class back and go, wait, we did that wrong. We need to back up, delete that day. We're going to start over. We did that wrong. It happens.
Right.
Yeah. I remember like one lesson in first period, I said, oh, this is going to be awesome. I got this. And then it was awful. Like, I don't know why it just wasn't working. Halfway through, I'm like, this is awful, guys, right? Like, you're feeling this. This isn't, I don't like this. You like it? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, let's just not do this. And I had to like change everything like for the rest of the day because it wasn't it. So seeing that humanness of teachers too, I think is important. Mm-hmm. And saying, I don't know, I forget, somebody asked me one time something really detailed about William Shakespeare. I'm like, I didn't know the guy. Like, I have no idea. I'm going to find out. I'll try to find some sources.
Yeah. And so being able to navigate that is so important, and realizing that this is an ongoing process. You said it, Stephanie, like it's not like a one-time thing. We have to continue to work up. We can't pick up the same thing that we did last year and use it this year. It's not going to work. We can't do what we did in first period and try to do it in fourth period. It's not going to work. Like we have to be constantly evolving, constantly open to changes and what's new. So as we wrap up, I just want to hear from everyone, starting with the students, one thing that you want to pass on to teachers and or students about getting ready for this upcoming school year. One word of advice, words of wisdom, whatever the case is.
To all the fellow, I'm gonna say one thing for students and one thing for teachers. Is that okay?
Okay, that's good.
So one thing for the students, I would say is please make sure that you turn that work in on time. Like, please just make sure you have that work turned in on time. Like, I cannot stress it enough. I don't care like how old you get. If you do not turn that work in on time, it will come back. Now, the older you get, now the teachers gonna stop like caring. It's gonna be more about like you have to do it more than so that they have to check you about it. So I would please do that work. That's all I'm gonna say about that. And when it comes down to teachers, I'm just like, please just be patient, be patient with students, because like I said, this is the first week. We're just about to put our feet in the water, you know what I'm saying? Just be patient, you got this, and know your strengths, and find your weaknesses, execute, and do your teacher things. Yeah.
All right, Erica.
I think for the students, just know that you're teachers and you are feeling the same thing right now. And just to try and find those teachers you can talk to, because having that group of teachers who you can go to on a free period and just talk to, that's really important. And that's going to become really important as you go through middle and high school. And then for teachers, I think it's just, again, we're all going through the same thing right now, but also addressing the fact and understanding the fact that your students have these emotional, mental issues. And you might not know it yet, but you have it as well. So just knowing that and trying to work through that together rather than telling them that they're lazy, I think will be very helpful for not only them and their that student, but just the atmosphere of their classroom and their community and their place at the school.
All right, and teachers?
All right. I think mine's going to be a little bit similar to what Jamon and Erica said. I think my advice to teachers, especially student teachers, always is greet the kids excitedly. I mean, welcome them in with a smile, whether they are the 35th kid to walk in the door that you're trying to scramble for a seat, or if they came in 20 minutes late, or if you haven't seen them in 3 weeks. Greet them excitedly. You're happy to see them, because that may be the biggest smile they get all day. And they're the reason we're there. So, what else are you going to do? They're our purpose.
So I would agree with Stephanie, give that energy to those kids, because that's why we're there. And although we're tired and we have so many things going on right in our own lives and balancing, give them that energy and treat them with that smile, and understand they're human. And they have days that they're going to come in and they're not going to be themselves, and you give them that grace, as we mentioned earlier, give them that humanity, let that space be there. And then I would say, really listen to their voices. I think sometimes we need to slow down and listen, and hear what they have to say. And also, teachers, this is just, me, advocate for yourselves, to others in your profession and to your bosses. Advocate for yourself, because although we are fierce for students, I think like most teachers are fierce for students. That's where we're passionate. Sometimes we are not advocates for our own selves in our practice, and learn to use your voice to stand up as well.
Thank you. And thank y'all for joining me today in this conversation, in the midst of the wild and craziness of getting back and ready to school. So I hope our listeners will really take in on what was shared today as we think about going back to school, and as we really think about doing what's best for our students, all students. Just stay safe out there, and join us next time.